We have quite an interesting topic, and our goal at ECS is always to add value, and hopefully you get some value out of this topic. So the topic today is leveraging analytics and intelligence to drive business decision making and business growth ultimately. And we have a great panel here. Let me just start off by introducing myself. I'm AJ Joshi. I'm RevOps partner at Empirical. I've spent over 20 years working at companies large and small. Last 5 have been working as a consultant. And I know I have many of my clients on this call as well who I've worked with. My focus is in technology and operations, revenue operations. I have a background in engineering, and later I led several senior operations roles at companies before before I got into consulting. So, and I'll share this with you. This whole panel has quite a bit of experience, like me, both as operators and also as consultants. And so that's going to be our focus here. So let me kind of throw out the topic really quick. The topic is business analytics and how it's used in decision making. And the angle we're using is a little different. Many of you have heard me talk a lot about technology and new technology, new tools that are being used. That's not what we're going to talk about today. Today, we're going to stretch the topic a little bit more and talk about the use of analytics in business decision making. So I'm going to start off with the hypothesis that data is not really used in the best possible way to make decisions at companies. And let's talk about real life examples with this team here about how that analytics is now okay. You spend the money in investing in technology to get you the right data. You've got the right metrics that you're working with. You've got a tech stack that's developed over time. But now what? What do you take that to the next step and then prove it to me that you're actually impacting your bottom line with the investment that you've made? So that's going to be our thesis for today. We've got around 40 minutes or so that we'll be talking. And just before we get started, I just want to give you some ground rules. We want this to be an interactive discussion. So put your questions into the Q&A. You see a Q&A box at the bottom. Put your questions there, and we'd like to answer them as we go through the topics. And we'll keep this as a free-flowing conversation. So to kick this off, I'm going to introduce my panelists, Jonathan Peters, Senior Operating Partner at Empirical. Jonathan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Thank you, AJ, and good afternoon, everyone. Jonathan Peters, Senior Partner, as AJ had mentioned, with Empirical. I come with over 30 years in business experience in publicly held, private equity backed, as well as privately held businesses. So looking forward to the discussion here today, and hopefully we'll have some great questions too. Thanks, AJ.
Okay, perfect. And we're also joined with Jeff Stello. So Jeff is a guest here. He is a C-level executive, board member, operating partner, and he's joining us to add more insight into the discussion. Jeff, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and how you got here?
Sure. Thank you, Ajay. Nice to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. Jeff Stello, about 30 years of experience in leadership positions, CFO and CEO of public and private companies, venture-backed companies, startups, also private equity-backed companies across an array of industries. Currently, I'm the chairman of a specialty lighting business that serves machine visioning industry. And I'm also a president of a recent startup, AST, that provides outsourced sales and use tax compliance services.
Thank you, Jeff. It's great to have you on the panel. And also Shubho. Shubho is a supply chain partner at ECS. Shubho, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes, my name is Shubho Chatterjee, and first of all, thank you to all the attendees for taking time during your busy day or evening to listen to us, and hopefully we'll have a very engaging session. And thanks to Ajay and Bill for putting this together. And as far as my background, I have about 30 years worth of experience in Fortune 500 startups and small and medium-sized companies in various roles, C-level roles. Chief Operating Officer, CIO, etc. And my role at Empirical is as a partner in digital transformation and supply chain. And basically my background is primarily as an engineer. I was trained as an engineer, but I've kind of morphed into many roles so that today I really don't know who I am. So over to you, Ajay.
Yeah, that may be a story for a lot of us, wearing many hats. All right, let me kick off this discussion by giving you an easy one, Jonathan, which is, what is business analytics and intelligence, and why is it important today?
Let's start with your second question first, AJ. Why is it important? Well, it simply allows leaders to make better informed decisions. And whether that's at the executive leadership team or specific analytics that are provided within functional groups, it allows their teams to make better informed decisions. And this crosses all functions of an organization. It could be sales, it could be operations, distribution, manufacturing, accounting and back office, as well as certainly supply chain. So that's why it's so important, is really to make those better informed decisions.
So analytics has always been used in the financial functions of a business, and what we've seen in my world of revenue operations is data everywhere. You know, they're looking at the marketing funnel and how you get data to win more customers and such. But I want to ask you, Jeff, do you have any examples where the data has been used to make a better business decision that produced an ROI for your company?
Sure. A couple examples. One comes to mind, and you make a good point that just having the data doesn't automatically mean you make the right decision.
Right.
So it's important to analyze it properly. It's important to have the discipline to track it, to better understand it. But one example I could point to was this was on a interim CFO engagement where the company was a company that was a logistics business that moved vehicles all over the country, and they regularly produced certain reports for the management team that gave them metrics about gross profit of these various routes. And there was a small footnote at the bottom of one of these reports which said something about underwater transactions. And I asked what that was, and the controller said, "Well, those are routes that we're losing money on," and didn't understand why and why it wasn't more emphasis. And we kind of turned the meetings around to focus on those outliers, not spend a whole lot of time on the week-to-week information that didn't change, but look at those outliers and fix them, either through better pricing or lower cost of delivery. And within about 3 months, we were able to move the gross profit margin 5 percentage points positive. So again, it sometimes it's focused on parts of the data or what's the exceptions versus I'm always leery of averages and weighted averages, because it tends to hide problem areas. So focus on those exceptions, and you can make significant improvements to your bottom line very quickly.
Jeff, I think the example that you gave really highlights another skill set that a lot of leaders don't have, which is a beginner's mindset, is to look at a data set as a beginner. And you had that luxury looking and asking a question that many others might have seen that specific data point, that specific metric, but hadn't questioned it. But you went out and you questioned it. And so I just wonder that whether within all this reporting that we have, that some of us as leaders are missing out on looking at it, kind of stepping back and looking at the data as an aggregate and highlighting the types of issues that you saw when you looked at it.
Yes, and it's also important to bring accountability into the process as well. Worked with another company a few years ago that was struggling with, it was very successful. It was growing, but it was struggling. They had just moved to a new facility, added more people, added more equipment. This was a Sprinter van upfitter, and they couldn't get past 5 vehicles per week that they were completing. And in short order, we produced a couple pieces of information that they didn't have easy access to, but we brought the supervisors of the 14 workstations together every week, And every week they had a report. My target was, in this case, 5 vehicles, and my actual was 5. And the first week, there were 1 or 2 who only had an actual of 4, never said a word, didn't go back to them, but they never wanted to come back in after that meeting among their peers and report 4. So they consistently were reporting 5, and it wasn't long before somebody came to the meeting and said our target was 5 and we accomplished 6. And
Right.
that brought the rest of the team around, and all of a sudden, within a very short time period, over 2 quarters, we increased the revenue output by 60% just by getting that, improving that production capability.
That's amazing, and I do want to talk a little bit more about that point, which is accountability behind the data once you get it. But I wanted to turn to Shubho, and Shubho is a metrics guy, obviously with a supply chain background. Him and I have talked a lot about dashboards in the past. So Shubho, if I was to look at KPIs that business owners, business managers should be focused on today, what would those key KPIs be that you think are important to look at?
It's a great question, Ajay. And before I say that, let me preface it by repeating a very often repeated axiom, which is, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, right? So therefore, to understand your business, you need to know how it is performing. And that relates to the KPI. So, I think we can all relate to ourselves, as our very simple example of our health. What are some of the key metrics that we look at overall for us? Blood pressure, glucose sugar levels, weight, PSA, and so forth. Similarly, for a business at the highest level, you've got some clear-cut KPIs that everybody looks at. Your cash flow, your working capital, your margins, etc. But then you go into the lower levels, you have to go into the functional levels, as Jonathan alluded earlier, to kind of cut and tailor for your specific functions what are the most important KPIs, such as an example, if you're in healthcare or in financial services, one of your most important KPIs, other than the regular revenue growth and EBITDA, etc., is for claim fraud and abuse. What was your, how many bills, how many claims did you over or underpay? Because that has tremendous repercussions on the government coming after you, state or local. So I want to stop here, Ajay, and see if you have any further questions on that.
Yeah, so we have these KPIs, and let's just say that I have put in money into developing a data lake and putting together nice dashboard metrics that are collecting information from many different sources, right? Which is the story of most of our clients, as you know. Now, the next step is taking those KPIs, those measures, and operationalizing them within the business. And I think that is the first gap that we see across different businesses.
Right. So which means
how do you address that?
Yes. So basically, you have a KPI. You have identified a KPI. That may or may not mean that you're collecting the data behind the scenes and are successful in actually populating the dashboard. So let's say you populate the dashboard and you have a pretty good look. So then, in order for you to actually operationalize the KPI, by that I mean that you want to see that it is working. Every process has a KPI, so the process is working, and you have somebody that is being held accountable to that process and to that KPI. So there is, it's actually quite, I would say, not complicated, but very onerous to operationalize the KPI, to get everybody on board, to make sure that the process is there, the process is identified, the people are on board. They see what's in it for them.
All right.
Okay. Right. And then you basically, you just go through the process, maybe do a pilot, and then finally institutionalize it after, you're satisfied with how it is working, and then communicate and spread the message. Like Jeff said, somebody said 6. The target was 5. Somebody had 4. Target was 5. So the thing was operationalized. You just did not, people didn't communicate. So you've got all of those soft factors into consideration when you operationalize the KPIs.
Yep. And while we were talking, and I just realized how much lingo we use. Kyle asked here, what is a data lake? And a data lake is a data repository, a centralized data repository. So, Kyle, what we find is many clients have got disparate systems across the enterprise, and it's a way to combine all that data together. Data lakes, data warehouses, different terms that apply to vast amounts of data, structured, unstructured data that you may have within the organization. And typically there's some level of business intelligence that goes to extracting that data and presenting the data to managers. That's actually a place where we spend a lot of time here. So, all right. So let me turn to Jonathan now. We've got some measures and metrics. So, Jonathan, KPIs are a big driving force for companies, right? And so as a leader, as a CEO of a company, which KPIs you use and why are they important?
Yeah, I think that's really important, and it can vary by the functional group that you're trading these for. It could be around customer experience, but it's really important in my mind and in my experience to focus on leading indicators, leading KPIs, as opposed to lagging. You know, the ultimate lagging KPI is your P&L, but by that point, it's all said and done. The month is done, the quarter is done. It's really important to determine going into it whether it's customer experience, whether it's inventory management, whatever the topic may be. It's really important to understand those leading KPIs, determine the right ones, and then track them. And then to build off of what Shubho was saying, in terms of gaining alignment and accountability, it all starts at the top. It starts with the leadership team being aligned and agree to what we're tracking. You know, from there, you can assign functional KPIs, but training is incredibly important as well. If individuals in the organization don't know why they're tracking to that and ultimately what it means, they're probably not going to buy into it and may not have skin in the game for it. I think on the backside of it, rewarding and recognizing, very important, you know, within KPIs. To get the traction and the accountability that you're looking for. So I know I took that a couple of different directions, but I just off of what Shubho was saying as well.
So on that same topic, we have a question here from the audience is, with the rapid changes in business in the last few years, have the metrics that you have tracked changed over that time? I'll give you all a chance to answer. Maybe Jeff, I'll start with you. Have you changed what you're measuring and tracking as KPIs?
Well, for the one business that I'm working with, we have stayed consistent, and that will show us trends upward or downward. And there have been cycles in this past 3 or 4 years, and I honestly think right now is one of the most challenging time periods we've seen since 08, 09, where the uncertainty about the economy is coming into play, not just for us as a business, but for our customers. But no, I about 15 years ago, I became a big fan of the Entrepreneur's Operating System, and they focus on, or one of the tools they use is a scorecard, which has about 15 to 20 metrics. You track it every week. You bring it to your leadership team meeting every week, and everybody discusses them. You also use that as an education tool, because I've got people in that meeting who don't know what EBITDA is or doesn't know the significance of revenue per FTE, full-time equivalent, as an example. And so we use it to help educate them and likewise do that in town halls for the rest of the company. So it can change. And I find that it tends to change as the development phase of the company changes. So for instance, I mentioned AST, Sales and Use Tax Consulting. Nothing more important. Cash flow is important. Financial performance is important. Nothing is more important than customer satisfaction, client satisfaction for us. And it pains me to ever do a project for a client to help them identify their potential liabilities and give them a game plan. And if they don't become a compliance client, that has a recurring revenue stream. So
Hmm.
that client satisfaction to me means more than any numbers on a page. And that
Hmm.
conversion rate of project work to recurring revenue streams is also more important. And again, that's because of the stage that we're in, early stage business.
Yeah. Great. Anyone else have like new KPIs that you brought in more recently?
Yeah, so just a quick example. So, if when you bring in a new channel of, let's say, sales, marketing, or distribution,
Hmm.
okay, then obviously you'll have new KPIs for that. So anytime you are bringing in either a new source or a new delivery mechanism, obviously you have to add those KPIs, the new ones that are relevant to that particular uh, process or
Hmm.
the mechanism.
Sure.
You probably can't dovetail it or kind of make it similar to the ones that you have.
Yeah. I'll give you one that some of my clients have taken on now, which is an adoption KPI, is adopting AI technologies into what they do on a regular basis. I find that really interesting because it's a um, top-down KPI saying we want to try to incorporate AI tools or AI methodologies into 60% of what we do. So that's a tall order, and they're actually measuring that today to look at how they're using large language models, ML, things like that, which I think is really interesting. And I'm not sure. Any thoughts on whether that's a good way to bring in technology?
I'll ask you a question on that, Ajay. So when they are saying that I want to have 60% of my business adopt AI, did they actually to what extent did they do the pre-evaluation of what parts of the business really need AI and or they don't? Because you really don't need AI for everything.
Sure. That's fair. Any other thoughts on that? I just think that's going to be pushing a lot of leaders towards that as we see a future very different from where we've been yesterday. All right, let me move to another topic then, which is touching a little bit on what Jeff talked about, right? So this is you've got your measures, you've got the data, you've got your pretty charts and everything, and you've got this data out there that tells you how you're doing. The challenge is how you, one, instill a culture within your company of database decision making, meaning everyone's looking at the data. This is really hitting on a lot of things that we see very regularly. Can you share some examples of how you have dealt with that issue as a C-suite executive, Jeff? Maybe I'll start off with you.
Yeah, so each one of our KPIs is has an owner, an individual owner. That doesn't mean that person's solely responsible for it, but they are the ones overlooking it and seeing it. And similar to our strategic planning objectives, if we're falling behind or if we're off track, it's not just that person's responsibility to fix it. It's a team responsibility
Hmm.
to work with that owner to fix whatever measurement we aren't achieving. So it really does foster a good system will foster teamwork, and it will help to also move those metrics and move that type of accountability down throughout the organization. So if you just consistently keep doing that from top down,
Hmm.
I think you'll get better results overall.
Yeah. And Jonathan, you and I have talked about this accountability issue quite a bit. It's across many, it's one of the first things that clients talk to us about is I need better accountability in my business. So how do you deal with that?
Well, it becomes a cultural issue, right? It's about, again, starting with alignment on the leadership team. The leadership team is holding hands. They firmly believe in what is being measured will drive the results, the expected results, then passing that down. There's also, when I say culture, there's also when the leaders, the managers hold themselves accountable and the rest of the employee base sees that, that sends a very strong message in itself. And so therefore, we can call each other out as leaders, but then we can also hold the team accountable because we're walking the talk there.
What does that look, Jonathan, on the kind of a day-to-day basis? Is this like looking at the data more often or having more data that's out there for people to look at on a continuous basis? Like everyone in the organization knows how their boss and their subordinates are doing.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. There's a cadence for respective KPIs that need to be looked at. Some of them, quite frankly, are daily metrics. Some are weekly, some are monthly, some are quarterly. So establish the cadence of what you're going to look at. How are you going to present those? Many times it's within some type of a formalized dashboard, and we can talk about IT in a little bit in terms of how to support that. But there clearly has to be good visibility to the KPIs so that everybody knows when they walk in the morning, how did I do yesterday? Or how did I do last week? That visibility has to be very clear and very open to, the respective groups.
Yeah. No, that's true. I think that's often one of the big lacking aspects, especially when people scale companies, is that accountability that comes through. You often have the owner or the founder who may have a certain mindset with looking at data, but how do you instill that as you scale your business? I think that's often the challenge. So, okay, so here's an interesting question that came up from our attendees: is if you could track only one KPI, what would it be? Only one answer. Let me start off with Shubho.
I would say CSAT. And my
Okay,
reason
good
for
one.
saying that is, the
Just
customer,
so people understand what a CSAT is.
it's customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So and my reason for saying that is the customer is the reason for the business, not the other way around. Okay, so if we don't have customers, we don't have a business.
Good one. Good one. Jonathan, one
Well,
KPI.
yeah, I would concur that it starts with voice of the customer. They're going to make purchasing decisions based upon their experience. And they move purchases away from the particular business or other, it all comes back to that. So I would agree that if you had to boil it down to one. Now, that being said, I don't think it's very practical to boil it down to one because you not only have to look at it from an external perspective, i.e. customer experience, but you also have to look at it from the health of the business and what's important to the business.
Why I like this question is because that's where we are today. We've got so many metrics, so many KPIs that people want to simplify. So maybe one's not the right answer, Jonathan, as you say, but certainly a clear number that everyone knows how they're doing at any point in time. Jeff, I'll let you answer the question. What's your one KPI?
Yeah, I said earlier that that's important especially for our startup business, and I'll just put a little different twist on it to say that almost the same thing, that tough to you could have a system that would give you immediate feedback from every delivery that you make to a customer, and some companies have that. But again, to quantify that and to accumulate it and so forth, sometimes challenging. But I'll relate to forward-looking, and in our business, it starts with quotes. So every day we know exactly who we provided quotes to for our product. We can very quickly see trends up and down. And to me, that's in a way is a measurement of customer satisfaction to an extent, because they wouldn't come back for even the quote, let alone the order. So quotes and orders, which then lead to revenue. And again, it's another way of saying customer satisfaction, because they don't come back if you're not meeting their needs and exceeding their needs.
That's a really good one as well. And Jeff, just to that point, I think there's different one KPIs for different businesses. As you found, you might have seen one, hey, here's quotes is probably the most important one for them. But someone, for someone else, depending on what stage they're in, maybe it's an acquisition stage, and so they're trying to bring in new customers. So it could be something like, converted leads or something like that. Yeah. All right, here's another good one from Lawrence, and maybe I'll start off with Jonathan on this. Who should be responsible for driving the scorecard metrics? Should it be the functional metrics defined by functional leaders, or should they be pushed down from the C level? This is a really good question.
That's a great question. And, I would take it to a higher level to start the answer and then
Yeah.
go from there. It really starts with the strategic planning process.
Hmm.
What is the desire of the owner of the PE company, whatever, for the particular business? Where are they going? Back to what Shubha was talking about, all roads will get you there, but where are you going? Now, strat plan gets put in place. From there, those important KPIs can be identified and tracked to make sure that we're tracking to that desired outcome with, again, on an annual basis, quarterly, monthly, whatever the case may be. Now, I think the leadership team can define the KPIs at a high level. When it comes down to, let's say, within the sales organization or within supply chain, there has to be buy-in from the functional managers as to, because they're the most knowledgeable as to why is something performing or not performing? What's the root cause of it? And they have that insight that the C-suite's not going to have. But at a high level, that strategic direction has to be given from the C-suite level.
Yeah, great one. Shubha, what are your thoughts on
Yeah,
setting those?
I concur with Jonathan, that first, so when the strat plan is set, the strat plan will basically give you or should lead to goals and objectives. Okay, and therefore at the highest level, the KPIs for the organization. Now then you roll it down to the different functional levels. That's where communication of the strat plan and leadership alignment is very, very critical, because you got to explain to the people in the trenches, to the rank and file, what it means for them, and therefore how these macro level KPIs translate into trench level measurements.
Yeah, no, that's
Okay.
yep. So one of the I'll share an example. One of the companies that I've worked with, portfolio company for a PE-backed business, they were asking, the CEO was tracking leads into the business. So very focused, wanted to see the leads that came into that. And most of us on the marketing side, sales and marketing side, know that leads is not, it's not a high level, C-level metric. That's it. Leads are dime a dozen, right? And they're not really they're a weak predictor of your business performance at best. So Jeff, let me ask you, if you were in a situation like that, maybe as a consultant, how would you deal with that in terms of, changing that thinking from to actually allow the functional experts to make that decision on what those metrics need to be?
Well, I prefer for them to do that, by the way.
Okay.
As a CEO, I'll have more involvement in setting the overall corporate goals,
Mm.
less involvement in taking it down to the departmental level. This is just my style. It's more hands off.
Right.
I'd rather see those leaders develop those and move those through their organization. I don't want to. I don't need to be able to do their job. I don't
Yeah.
want to be able to do. That's their job. But if it's not working, then I get involved. I stay hands off until something's not working, and then I'll roll up my sleeves and work with the manager collaboratively to try to accomplish the goals we're trying to understand why we're not accomplishing our objectives. So
Yeah. No, that's totally fair.
if
Now,
they're getting the results that we desire, I don't question their methods typically.
that's a totally fair point. So there's such thing as overmanagement. So someone asked a question about how many KPIs are, if one KPI is too few, what is a fair number of KPIs a mid-sized business should track? So, and rough estimate, what do you think from as a senior leader, what's a fair number? I'll have Jonathan start off first.
It depends a bit on the business model.
Sure.
And so, but in my experience, it's been typically in that 4 to 7 range. If you have too many, you're going to get lost in the weeds and you're not going to focus on really what's driving the outcomes. If it's too few, you may not have a broad enough view. So I think you just really have to work through that, given the particular business, the business model, and then determine. But I wouldn't think it's any more than 7 by any means, but probably in that 4 to 7 range.
That's a good number to have a conversation around even. Jeff, your thoughts?
Yeah, EOS simple. It's not the question of the number. EOS simplifies this in this way. They say, imagine you're on a deserted island
Hmm.
and your business is running. You're not there every day. What would you like? You're going to get one piece of paper every day that tells you what you want to know about your business. And from that, you want to be able to determine, is it going the way you want it to, or are there problems?
Yeah.
So it's what can you get on one page? I'm not saying in microscopic view, but we tend to use about it's probably 15 to 20. I don't know the exact number, but it covers financial metrics, it covers production metrics, it covers sales metrics, it covers safety metrics.
Hmm.
And again, the idea is not necessarily what's the correct number, but what's the information that you need to see on a weekly basis that will tell you your company's doing well or it's not doing well. And I find that it works extremely well
Yeah,
to try to limit it to that. And you also have 13 weeks of data at the same time going across your page.
that's correct. Yeah. All right, I wanted to shift topics as we get closer to the end of our session. We're asked a lot about investing in technology, and we're often brought in to implement technology, but at a higher level, they're making a decision on ROI for their technology. So I guess let me ask maybe Jonathan this question is what tools and technologies do you think businesses should invest in today that will drive the future?
It's a great question. And here again, I just want to preface my answer by saying that technology as a standalone solve is not the right answer, but rather it has to be people, process, and technology.
Mhm.
If it's not all linked, then the technology is just that. In the last business I was running, we developed a pretty powerful dashboard. Now we use Microsoft BI, but there's a number of platforms that you can use. What I found very beneficial in the technology was being able to have that click-through capability so that I could keep doing a deeper dive down to, when you say the 5 whys, yes, you see a metric and you see the performance of it, you can see it over trend, but I want to understand what's below it. I want to be able to get to it very easily. So that's just one aspect of the technology that I found to be very useful.
Hmm. Shubho, any thoughts on what leaders should be looking at?
Yeah, so I want to extract that, your question, that's a great question by saying that in order for you to know what you want, or what you need, you'd have to identify where you're going, right? So the role of a business technology leader should be to first identify for the business what technology would be necessary, let's say in the next 12 to 18 months.
Mhm.
Is it workflow automation? Is it financial accounting package? That is important for the business, not for technology's sake. Okay. And so, or is it generative AI? Everybody seems to be jumping on the GAI bandwagon, whether you need it or not. Okay. So it's just step back and see what's needed, and then go through a prioritized process of people, process, and technology considerations, including collaboration with all your stakeholders.
Sure.
And then, select whatever you need.
Fair points. So Jeff, in your experience, how have you avoided shiny new object syndrome when it comes to investing in tech?
Well, it's always there. Everybody picks up a magazine or reads an article or watches a video that talks about metaverse or some other new technology that they think we should be involved in. And so I think that might take a little more gut reaction than pure analysis to kind of govern that. But what I think it tends to come down to with the companies that I'm working with, there's not unlimited resources to implement this technology, and also there's only so much. I hate to say it that way, but there's only so much an organization can absorb in terms of adopting new technology. So those are two things that have to be considered before you go investing anywhere. You're just going to be throwing money out the window.
Right.
And the last thing I would say that of what we're doing, we have done more of the basics in the last couple of years of what was needed internally for the business. Now our discussions around technology are how can we make it easier for our customers to do business with us, and how can we provide more information and better information to our customers online so they don't have to call or interact with somebody. We don't have no problem with them calling and interacting with us on a personal level, but if they can get their answer quicker in terms of what's in stock and what's available and so forth, that's where our focus is going forward.
No, totally fair. And Jonathan, let me ask you, since you've been in this position many times and you advise people on this, how do you decide on ROI with a business analytics type of technology?
That's as a leader and as a answering to a business owner, whether it be a PE firm or other, that's a very important question, particularly when you're putting forth a proposal that says, I would like to invest X. First question is, what return are you going to get back to me? And I think it's a multi-pronged answer. Jeff, what you were just talking about with making it easier to do business. We had put in my last role, we put in an e-com capability that about 10% of our transactions were online at the beginning or prior to upgrading the platform. Within a short amount of time, right around a year, we had around 50% of our transactions flowing through. And that affected efficiencies in all parts of the business, from not only customer-facing roles, such as customer care, taking orders, but if an order can move from the customer all the way through to fulfillment with minimal touches and just manage the outliers, that creates quite a bit of efficiencies that can drive a significant ROI on that investment. So that's just one example of that. To give you a specific ROI, I think it's very difficult to do.
Yeah. Should we be asking for ROIs from BI investments at this point? I know many of us who are on the other side of it says, yes, that's how we sell. That's how we sell technology. But I'm just wondering about, how it actually gets used. Shubho, any thoughts?
Yeah, I want to piggyback on specific to that, with an example. So in my previous life, we were dealing with a lot of insurance brokers. Okay. And so they were calling to making calls to the call center. And the reason being, they wanted to know at certain times of the month how much business they had done, because there were commissions involved. Okay. They wanted to get a report. And so what we did was we found out that, they were calling, how much time it took for the agent to basically service those calls, how much time the broker spent, and how much time then after the agent, answered their question, how long did it take for us to basically provide them with the report? 3 segments, okay? And we quantized those. And then we built a portal for them. I mean, this was really a no-brainer in a sense. We built a portal for them. We uploaded their reports, okay? Or they could even do their query searches, etc., meaning that it cut down on that entire value stream, non-value added stream, so that they could self-service. Our call center agents got alleviated from that, time that they were spending, non-productive time, and did something else that they could, that they could do. Fantastic. And so it was very quantized, in terms of quantified benefit.
Yeah, so a time saving, in other words.
Well, time saving as well as, customer satisfaction. So we asked them after that, the brokers.
Right. Interesting. All right. This has been a really good discussion. And I know we had committed to do it in 45 minutes. I'm mindful of everyone's lunch hour over here. So I want to thank everyone who joined us today, and the panelists also are open for you to reach out to them also if you should choose. So I'm going to share email addresses of our panelists. Feel free. You can also look us all up on LinkedIn if you need to. And if you want to talk about a specific business challenge you have with analytics, we're happy to support. We at ECS do both implementation as well as strategic advisory around this. And or if you're just looking for a second set of eyes while you're making a technology investment, please reach out to us as well. So again, I want to thank everyone who joined, and I really want to thank the panelists as well. Have a great rest of the afternoon.